Scientists found the brain's literal off switch for distractions. Somewhere in one of the oldest parts of your brain, buried underneath the layers responsible for complex thought and language, there's a small cluster of neurons that has apparently been doing something researchers didn't fully appreciate until recently. It filters out distractions before you're even consciously aware they existed. Not through willpower, not through some effortful mental process you can practice and improve like a muscle, but through what looks a lot more like a built-in switch, sitting in ancient neural circuitry that predates most of what we think of as higher cognition entirely. This matters more than it might sound like at first, because almost everything people believe about focus assumes it's a resource you actively manage. Push through the distraction. Try harder to concentrate. Discipline yourself into paying attention. That framing has shaped decades of productivity advice, self-help books, and workplace training, all built on the assumption that attention is fundamentally a matter of effort and willpower. What this discovery suggests instead is that a meaningful part of your ability to ignore distractions isn't something you're actively doing at all. It's something happening automatically in a region of the brain most people have never heard of, well before the distraction ever reaches the part of your mind capable of consciously deciding to ignore it. Here's the mechanism, as far as researchers currently understand it. The region in question sits in an evolutionarily ancient part of the brain, the kind of structure found in a huge range of animals, not just humans, which tells you something important right away. This isn't some sophisticated, recently evolved feature unique to complex human cognition. It's old machinery present in creatures with far simpler brains than ours, doing a job that predates language, predates reasoning, predates almost everything we associate with conscious thought. The neurons identified in this cluster appear to act as a kind of gatekeeper, deciding which incoming sensory information gets passed along for further processing and which gets suppressed before it ever reaches your conscious awareness. That's genuinely different from how attention has traditionally been modeled. The older picture of focus generally involved the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for planning, decision-making, and higher reasoning, actively working to suppress distracting stimuli through effortful top-down control. Under that model, ignoring a distraction was fundamentally a cognitive task, something the executive part of your brain had to actively do, which is exactly why it feels tiring after a while. Executive function running constantly does drain mental energy, the same way physical exertion drains the body. But this newly identified filtering mechanism operates somewhere else entirely, lower down, older, running in the background without requiring that same kind of effortful executive involvement. This raises an obvious question, and it's the one worth sitting with for a second. If there's a background filter handling distractions automatically, why does focus still feel so difficult for so many people, so much of the time? The answer researchers are pointing toward involves how this automatic filter can get overwhelmed or bypassed under certain conditions, rather than the filter simply not existing in people who struggle with focus. Environments packed with constant notifications, competing sounds, and visual clutter don't just add more distractions for your willpower to fight off. They potentially flood the automatic filtering system itself past whatever threshold it's built to handle, forcing the slower, more effortful executive system to step in and take over a job that ancient circuitry was originally supposed to be handling on its own. That distinction changes the practical advice considerably, and this is where it stops being just an interesting brain fact and starts being something you can actually use. If focus were purely a willpower issue, the solution would always be some version of try harder or build more discipline. But if a meaningful chunk of your ability to filter distractions runs through automatic, lower brain circuitry that can get overwhelmed by sheer volume of competing stimuli, then the more effective intervention isn't building more willpower at all. It's reducing the raw amount of competing input reaching that filter in the first place, so the automatic system can actually do its job instead of getting flooded past capacity and forcing your exhausted executive function to compensate. This lines up with something people who study deep, sustained concentration have observed anecdotally for years, long before this specific mechanism was identified. Environments with fewer competing stimuli consistently produce better sustained focus than environments where people are relying purely on willpower to ignore constant interruptions in a noisy, notification-heavy space. Turns out there may be a very literal biological reason behind that pattern. It's not that discipline doesn't matter at all, it's that discipline is likely functioning as a backup system, one that has to activate specifically when the automatic filter gets overloaded, rather than being the primary mechanism responsible for focus under normal conditions. There's a broader pattern here too, connecting this discovery to a growing body of research suggesting a lot of what feels like conscious, effortful mental control is actually being handled well below the level of awareness, with conscious effort only stepping in when those automatic systems get pushed past their limits. Decision-making research has found similar patterns, certain choices appearing to get initiated in the brain before a person reports consciously deciding anything at all. Movement research has found comparable results, coordinated behavior patterns showing up in brain activity seconds before the movement itself becomes visible. Attention now appears to fit into that same broader picture, with a genuine, physical, and much older component operating beneath the layer most people assume is doing all the work. There's also a practical layer here because it explains why certain environments feel effortlessly focused while others feel like a constant uphill battle even when the task isn't especially difficult. A library, a quiet workspace, a room with minimal visual clutter, these aren't just pleasant preferences, they may directly reduce the raw sensory load your automatic filtering system has to process. Compare that to an open office with constant movement, multiple conversations, and a phone buzzing every few minutes. In that second environment, the ancient filtering circuitry is likely getting overwhelmed almost constantly, which means your slower, more effortful executive system has to step in far more often just to maintain the same level of concentration a quiet room would provide almost automatically. That's not a willpower gap between two people working in those different spaces. That's a difference in how much work the automatic system versus the effortful system has to do just to reach the same result. This also offers a different way to think about why certain habits genuinely help focus, and why others that get recommended constantly tend to underperform. Advice like just remove your phone from the room works precisely because it reduces raw sensory competition rather than asking you to fight harder against a phone that's still sitting there buzzing. Advice that instead focuses purely on mental techniques for resisting distraction without addressing the actual volume of competing stimuli in the environment is essentially asking the tired, effortful system to keep compensating for a filtering job it wasn't originally built to handle on its own. One approach works with the biology, the other works against it, and over the course of a full day, that difference compounds considerably. There's a reasonable case that this research eventually reshapes how workplaces and schools think about environments built for concentration, moving away from open floor plans and notification-heavy tools designed to maximize connectivity, towards spaces deliberately built to minimize raw sensory load. That shift would represent a meaningful change from decades of environments optimized for the opposite goal, often at the direct expense of exactly the kind of environment this filtering system appears to need in order to function without forcing a costly executive override every few minutes. None of this means willpower is fake or that discipline doesn't matter, and it's worth being clear about that, because it would be easy to walk away from this thinking focus is entirely automatic and nothing can be done to improve it. What it actually means is that the target for improving focus might be misplaced for a lot of people, instead of purely trying to build more mental toughness to override distractions through sheer effort. The more productive strategy, based on how this system appears to actually work, is reducing the raw volume of competing input hitting your senses in the first place, giving that ancient, automatic filter room to do the job it's apparently been doing all along, quietly, long before conscious effort ever needs to get involved at all.